Nash, before you start off, I did mention GCC.
Yep.
So if there's anyone in the audience that may not be familiar with that, with Government Community Cloud, do you kind of want to start by explaining what that is and how kind of the feature they may see when they Google something and what they see in their tenants may be different?
Yep, and I'll run through that stuff too. Asate, I think your mic might be causing an echo though. All right, thank you. All right, so yeah, the entire set of presentations you're going to see today are all going to be delivered by folks like Asate and myself, who only work with state and local government organizations. And the overwhelming majority of the organizations we support do use the Office 365 Government Community Cloud. So we are only going to cover things that government organizations would see in that GCC environment. You don't have to worry about us showing or teaching a bunch of things that aren't available to government organizations today. I am going to just start, since we've got plenty of time, with a very high level overview of the concept of Microsoft Teams and why Microsoft has invested so much time and energy into rethinking the way that organizations work with each other. And if you've gone to any of the trainings that Microsoft offers, you've probably seen this one slide that I have up on the screen as really a parent slide that just really explains the concept. And really the thing I want you to walk away from this is with the idea that Teams exists to be a central hub for teamwork within Office 365. All right, we're trying to bring together all of the people you work with, all the information you need, all the tools you use throughout your day to make it easier to do your job, accomplish your organization's mission. When we look at how people, before we introduced Teams, when we were looking at how people communicate and collaborate, the overwhelming majority of that happened over email and in meetings. And I'm assuming that if you're a Teams user, you probably don't particularly love email, and I assume if you're a human being, you don't love meetings. So a lot of the ways that we traditionally communicate and collaborate in organizations aren't particularly effective. They're not a lot of fun. And if there are better ways to do it, why not? We put a ton of energy and effort in designing Microsoft Teams to allow individuals and teams to rethink the way that they work with each other. There are three main pillars that we think of this in. The first one being take the way we communicate and collaborate and break down as many silos, as many friction points as possible. So when we think about the way that we used to communicate over email, where probably 2/3 of the things we did over email, wasn't a great tool for it. Those things work much better inside of Teams just because of the way conversations are constructed, right? If I'm working on 5 different initiatives with a lot of different people, in order to not have silos, I would end up with lots of emails that I may or may not have cared about, all of them going straight to the top of my inbox to rob my attention from whatever I was working on at that moment. When instead we move those conversations over into Teams, things get done a lot more efficiently. The information is easier to find. I don't at the same time both over communicate and under communicate because everybody can go and turn up or turn down the volume level of that communication. But just like the email piece, meetings is a major area for improvement. And you're going to see throughout Microsoft Teams that our meeting experience is designed to not work the way we used to do meetings. And the chief construct that you're going to walk away from this morning understanding is that when we did all of our research and looked at what made the most effective and efficient meetings, it was very seldom the meeting itself that was the differentiator. Effective meetings were effective because of what happened before, during, and after the meeting. So that before, during, and after construct, we're going to come back to it over and over and over again. I'm going to spend the next 20 or 30 minutes just talking about all of the ways that we set things up for success before we even get into the meeting. Okay. Now that happens by making all of the collaboration and the communication get easier. That happens by making sure that all of the content, all of the files that we're working on together are in the context of our collaboration. And if that happens to be a meeting, we want to bring it into the context of the meeting. And it also means we want to be able to bring all of the tools we use to communicate and collaborate into the context of how we're working together. All right, so those three legs of the stool we're going to see underpin everything in Teams, but definitely underpin our meeting story as well. That's it, one PowerPoint slide and we're done. I am going to load up a couple of the other pieces I have for my demo today. I am going to be split between a couple of different things here. I'm going to start out in just a web browser. I'm going to find my another virtual machine that I've got hooked up to a government community cloud environment. Once I get logged into that, we'll switch over there. I'm not going to spend much time on, or actually any time showing any of the mobile scenario, but I do want to call out loud and clear that whether I'm using the full-blown Teams desktop client on Windows or Mac OS, whether I'm using a modern web browser like Microsoft Edge or Google Chrome, or a smartphone like an Apple iPhone or anything running Android, our experience communicating and collaborating in Teams is going to be the same. And that's intentional. Microsoft knows that while there are certainly lots of people who use our products who are knowledge workers who sit at a desk or in a conference room all day, there are lots of people that is not the reality of their job. And in fact, if they're ever in the office, that's a bad thing. They should be in the field the entire day. And then there are lots of job roles in between. We want to make sure that however you need to be spending your day, whether it's with your actual full-blown computer or a laptop, using a shared computer or being completely mobile on a phone, that you have access to all of the communication and collaboration tools that you need to do your job. So you're going to see almost all of our meeting story is going to be the same on a cell phone as it is on a full-blown computer, all the way down to like being able to share your screen. Yep, you can share your screen on a smartphone if you want to walk somebody through something. When we're doing our meeting planning, same thing, right? Whether I'm in the office, whether I'm on the bus on the way to the office or out in the field, doing my forestry survey, we're going to be able to go and provide the functionality that you need here. As we go through and do this stuff, do keep asking questions in the Q&A. A bunch of them are coming in already. We do have several other Modern Workplace CSMs who are helping out by answering Q&A questions. I'm going to just drop my video off so that we get the full screen here and we can do this. And I will try to zoom in on things as I'm calling them out. So for the beginning here, I'm just in a web browser, not even the full-blown desktop client. And we'll be able to do all of the things we need to do here just by going to teams.microsoft.com. When we're looking at the pre-meeting experience, right, and thinking about the things that go into making a meeting effective, and being able to tie that into the actual meeting and after the meeting is done, we're going to start out by just the birthplace of a meeting, right? So inside of Teams on the left rail, I see a calendar. This calendar is just a reflection of your Outlook calendar. It's not a separate place to have a different set of meetings that you need to manage. It is a reflection of your Outlook calendar right here in Teams, that you don't have to jump over to Outlook to like find the meeting you're supposed to be in or to just quick schedule something. It is not designed to replace Outlook entirely, right? So do realize that if you completely are living inside of your Outlook calendar, that's where you're still going to stay, because we can't do things like shared calendars, color coding, all that fun extra stuff inside of the Teams calendar day. It's just meant to make it easier to join meetings without having to switch context. But the result of using this calendar is almost identical to what we would do over on the Outlook side. So where I can create a new meeting here, it's going to be very similar to the experience of creating a new meeting with Outlook and hitting the Teams meeting button in Outlook. The output is going to be exactly the same, whether I started from the Outlook side or started from the Teams side. So when we are creating it through Teams, We're going to see things that look awfully similar to creating it through Outlook. So I can go and create my meeting here as our Gov meeting intro. I can go and start adding attendees, and those attendees could certainly be folks that are inside of the organization or people who are outside of the organization, right? Just go ahead and throw that email address in there. So just like if I'm creating that Outlook invite that meeting invite in Outlook, I'm going to be able to manage my attendees here. Once you do start adding folks here, you will see a button on the right that says optional, so you can make optional attendees versus required. We've got our scheduling information. You will see suggestions for times to meet. So if I've set up a 30-minute meeting here, where Teams is going to go and look at everybody's Outlook calendar that it has access to and suggest free times. Additionally, there will be another tab at the top to pull open the full-blown scheduling assistant to make it easier when you're trying to get 6, 7, 8 people all in the room or on a virtual meeting together. So very similar to the scheduling assistant you'd see on the Outlook side. We've got basic repetition controls for recurring meetings. We can go and add our physical location, or we could just say something like it's in Microsoft Teams. And then the body of the message right here. The one thing that is different about creating a meeting inside of Teams versus doing it in Outlook, the only thing you can do in Outlook that you can't do in Teams is create a channel meeting. Now, channel meetings are largely outside of the scope of what I'm going to cover here, but we've got a session this afternoon. Sete, bail me out. When is our channel meeting session scheduled for?
The channel meeting session is scheduled with Jeff at 1:30 p.m. today.
Awesome. 1:30 Eastern. Come back to learn everything there is about channel meetings. Okay. All right, and then we have just the meeting body, and the meeting body, of course, is the same as the bottom area on your Outlook calendar invite. When we actually go to send out the Teams meeting invite, whatever you put in the meeting details will have all of your Teams meeting join information appended to it. And it'll end up looking just like you had gone and done it in Outlook and hit the make it a Teams meeting button. So the meeting body information here, we certainly can do everything that we would do in a regular email. You can be as simple as giving the meeting description and agenda right here. We can go as complicated as making it look like a full-blown email or memo to link to other information, put graphics in it, make it pretty, that kind of stuff. If there's something though that you normally do in Outlook to go and make these things work the way you want it to work, and it isn't available in Teams, just do realize that this isn't meant to be a complete replacement for Outlook today. Outlook has been around for a fair number of years and has a lot of extra features in it. And if you're the full, Outlook is still our full-blown calendaring tool. So there you certainly may run into some things that you use that aren't over in the Teams side, and that's fine. Just go and use Outlook for those scenarios. You'll find though that 90% of the time you will be able to just stay in the Teams calendar without having to flip over to Outlook, even for folks who are advanced Outlook users using a lot of the advanced features. Okay, quick example. Deborah is on Punch and Pie. Isaiah is on entertainment, right? We're gonna have a good meeting, we're gonna have a good time. All right, so when I hit send here, right, my other internal teammate Isaiah and this external person on their Gmail account, they're just gonna get a calendar invite showing up in their email, just like we would expect on the email side. So I'm gonna do that. Right, we're going to see that my Teams meeting calendar immediately updated. If I were to go and pop over to my Outlook calendar, we're going to see right away we've got that on my Outlook calendar immediately. because it is the same calendar. Just want to reemphasize, we do not want to make you have to have an extra calendar to have to manage. It's just your one calendar, just two different views of it for whatever is most convenient, depending on what you're trying to do. Okay, so setting up and calendaring, not that complicated, really familiar if you've been scheduling meetings inside of Outlook for Teams or Skype or WebEx or Zoom or anything. Doing it from Outlook is exactly the same. Hit the button at the top to make it a Teams meeting. Doing it from the Teams client itself, right? Just designed to make it super convenient for us to not only quick create a meeting here, as well as to go and hop into that meeting. However, I don't want to join this meeting yet, right? That's not my job. My job today is to explain how do we set meetings up for success ahead of time. Notice that when I've gone into my calendar and clicked on the meeting, I see all of the meeting details, just like I had filled out a second ago, but I see some other tabs here. Before the meeting even starts, I'm going to see some of the things that you might already be familiar with from the meeting experience itself, in that we have access to the meeting chat, right? We can start sharing files using OneDrive ahead of time to make sure that people have access to the content for it. And if you're using the built-in meeting notes functionality, I can get access to that as well beforehand. This is where we start seeing that Teams is designed to be a lot different than our legacy Skype product for meetings. This is where we start getting into the true pre-meeting experience and how we go and prepare ourselves to be highly effective and highly efficient with our time, right? If I click on the chat, I already have access to the meeting chat. So if you're used to doing Teams meetings and chatting during the Teams meeting, realize that that chat was available before the meeting and is designed to be available after the meeting, right? So if I want to get into my meeting chat here, I can start engaging with my other people. I can still go and change my meeting details. Like maybe I realize I want to add Deborah, and I can start sharing content. And we're going to run through a couple of those scenarios right now. So I'm going to add Deborah there just so I can show two halves of a conversation. In my one browser with the panda bear, I'm logged in as Joanna. In my hedgehog one, I'm logged in as Deborah. So we'll be able to show both halves of the conversation. All right, meeting chat. Meeting chat, you're probably already familiar with as great ways to share links during a meeting, share written information, have people ask questions. I love meeting chat because I am a pretend extrovert. I'm really an introvert. And so especially in larger meetings, I'm way more likely to engage with other people over chat versus coming off of mute. When we have access to multiple different ways to communicate and interact, we'll see that we build a more inclusive environment. When I go and get into the chat ahead of time, I'm going to go and start engaging with people. So I can do things like start asking questions about the agenda. So I'm thinking we'll handle today's session like this. Oop. All right. I will point out that whenever we're doing meeting chat, that this is the same as our one-to-one or group chat. It's very similar to channel posts for that type of conversation. You'll see in the control bar or in the setting in the options bar down at the bottom, the little A with the paintbrush, right? That's gonna slide out all of the meeting format or the chat formatting options. And remember that chat is designed to replace email, right? Microsoft Teams chat was designed to make it so we spend way less time working on email. But a lot of the things we would do over email for formatting and making it look pretty are all going to be available here. So when we hit that little pencil button or the A with a paintbrush on it, we're going to see our basic formatting for the text. We're going to see some layout formatting, the ability to go and link other information. And then at the bottom is where we're going to see the button for attaching content. When we're doing this over a typical meeting, right, either an ad hoc meeting or one scheduled through Outlook or just a normal one we scheduled through Teams, The paperclip button is going to be letting us use OneDrive to share files with people. So if you're grabbing a file from your local computer, it's going to upload it to your OneDrive and automatically share it with the meeting participants that are internal to the organization. If you want to share with external folks, you do have to intentionally go and share with them. But also very similar to email, right? You're going to see the exclamation mark, right? If you want to go and mark something as urgent to really get people's attention. Underneath the ... we're going to see more options. Wherever you see a ... an ellipsis like this inside of Teams, it means, but wait, there's more. We've got a handful of other options for laying out things, as well as our undo and redo buttons are going to be hidden under there. And you'll notice that as your screen real estate expands, things will flow out of the ... Or if you have very little screen real estate, we'll shove the extra stuff underneath that ... If you're ever looking for something and not seeing the icon for it, hit the ... It's probably hiding underneath there for you.
Hey, Matt.
Go ahead.
Do you want to hold off until you finish for some questions, or do you want to?
I trust you to inject questions when they make sense.
Yeah, this one question that continues to come up, which is when you send an update to an attendee list, if you add a new person to an existing invite, will everyone get an email, or would they get the invite again where they have to accept it? Or would only the person you added get the invite?
Well, let's go and show that here. So I'm going to, I wonder if I have Isaiah's content or his password saved here. So just to kind of restate the question, when you go and make a modification to a meeting inside of Teams by adding, or sorry, inside of Outlook by adding an extra person or something like that, it gives you a pop-up dialog box that asks, do you want to just send an update or the invite to the new people, or should everybody get an updated invite? Well, when I went in and did this in Teams, it didn't show that notification, right? This kind of gets back to not everything that used to be done inside of Outlook is going to be done inside of Teams. Another similar question about like meeting reminders. You can't change the meeting reminder inside of Teams. That's because Teams doesn't do meeting reminders, right? That's still Outlook functionality. Outlook's calendar is our primary calendaring tool. We did not try to rewrite all of that inside of Teams. So we are going to keep running into things where it doesn't necessarily, where you still may need to go back over to Outlook to go and manage certain things. So this is one of them though, right? Hey, I want to go and change the attendees list, but I want the options that Outlook would have given me to either update everybody or choose to only update the people who are being added. So we went through and added Deborah to the meeting. And now I'm looking at Isaiah, who was on the original meeting, and we're going to see that Isaiah got the one meeting, right? We got the one meeting at, let's look at our little timeline here. Got the original meeting invite at 10:27, but then at 10, no, that's the update. I guess I accepted the meeting. So you got the original meeting invite at 10:24, and we see it was to, me, Isaiah, and to, random Gmail account. But then we see a couple minutes later, he got the update. When we did that, I do not get the option to choose. When we go and make changes to meetings inside of Teams, it is automatically going to update all of the invitees. In general, Teams meetings are being used for, meetings with your people manager team, your project team, your program team, no big deal. But what about that meeting that you have with your entire division or department? That might be a big deal, right? You may really want to only send out the original and that minor change you don't want everybody having to see. If that's the case, pop back over to Outlook, use Outlook to go and make those changes, because Outlook's going to give you more options for how you want to notify attendees about updates. Okay, but that's a great question. That one comes up all of the time. Again, the people who live and breathe Outlook for their calendaring, we're always going to find a couple of things that Teams just doesn't do for you today, and that's fine. We're just going to flip back over to Outlook for those scenarios where you need to do that. All right. Sete, my audio is coming through okay for you?
Yes, it is. And thank you for that. That was an excellent answer. Thank you.
I've heard it many, many times before. So, and I imagine we'll see a lot of real common questions come up today. This is, if you are having a question, throw it into that Q&A. You probably aren't the only one having it, and we'll try to respond directly in the Q&A. And Asete, Stacy, Bobby will come off mute and redirect me if they see anything that they know we should definitely cover. Okay, I'm going to close Isaiah's stuff down here. We're going to go back to. We were looking at two people. We were looking at Deborah as a meeting attendee, and then Joanna as, or sorry, Deborah. I'm going to get my hat straight, and we'll put them on the proper sides here so that I can keep them straight. There we go. So on the left, I've got the meeting organizer, Joanna. On the right, we've got Joanna's boss, Deborah. I'm going to do some of this stuff side by side so I can show both halves of a conversation. All right, so on the left, we're going and starting to share some information in the chat. So I'm, today we're going to handle today's session like this, and then maybe we'll do a numbered list of, intros and icebreaker. Overview of accomplishments. Round table, punch, and pie. But meeting is good without punch and pie. And all I've done is send a very simple chat message. Now I could have made this much more complicated. I could have attached files. I could have done a lot of other stuff. We will come to those things, but really real simple chat message with a list. On the left-hand side, if I go into chat as one of the people invited to the meeting, I actually see that I've got a new unread chat message. I did not by default get any notifications about this chat message because I haven't actually joined the meeting yet. So by default, meeting chat is muted until you participate in the meeting, either by participating in the chat, joining the meeting, all of that fun stuff. So if I do want to make sure I'm calling someone's attention to this, I might want to actually do something like an @mention, right? Since by default the meeting chat's going to be muted, right? Underneath the ... we see I have the option to unmute it. It's grayed out. If I do an @mention, it's going to draw somebody's attention to it a little bit more. Did you want to share about the new program initiative from the governor's office? Okay. Now we see that she's got an @mention, right? That's a good way to go and ahead of the meeting when you want to make sure that somebody's seeing it. We're going to call them out with an @mention. @mentions are tools that are used throughout much of our communication collaboration platform. You can do @mentions in email, you can do them in chat, you can do them in meeting conversations, we can do them in channels, and it's a great way of going and helping turn up the volume on something that someone needs to be able to see, and yet not send a one-on-one email where you end up isolating some of the conversation, right? We're trying to break down as many silos as makes sense. Okay. There have been a couple of questions where people are asking about the other sessions in today's training. And so I'm just going to take 1 second here to say, hey, the link that you use to get to where you're at right now, keep using that link to come to any of the later sessions there today. And Asete, is it a separate link for tomorrow? Or is it the same?
Yeah, it's a separate link for tomorrow. Okay. It's a separate link for tomorrow. Like you said, use the same link to join any of the sessions today, and to also see the recording for the sessions today, you will use the same link after the event is over.
Awesome, thank you. All right, and I'm trying to blow my screen up as much as I can by just hitting Control+ to zoom in so that people can see if they've got smaller resolution than I do. All right, so interacting in meeting chat ahead of time, right? Now that Deborah's seen this, if she goes and replies to it, sure, I'd love to, right? We get the full chat experience that you're used to. I do want to point out that the chat that we're using here is just a group chat. So, and this is something that oftentimes is a bit of a surprise to folks who have been in lots of Teams meetings and chatted in lots of meetings, to realize that really a meeting chat, when we just go and create a meeting invite through Outlook or through the calendar, is just a group chat, similar to if we'd have gone to chat and started a conversation with 2 or 3 people. But that's a great thing because it means we get all of the benefits of a group chat, meaning I can add additional people. If it's no longer relevant to you, you can leave the group chat. Additionally, you have the ability to turn the volume down on one that you're in by hitting that ... and muting it. If you no longer want to see notifications about it, that's how we turn those notifications off. We hit the mute button. And I think, I think back to and compare this to the never-ending family group iMessages that my mom starts, where she's got all of my siblings and our spouses on, and it made sense when we were planning Christmas, but now she's having a conversation with my brother that I don't care about. I have the option to very politely just mute the conversation, or more forcefully and directly leave it, right? The chat story inside of Teams is a lot more like the thing that people are used to inside of iMessage or WhatsApp for communication, where I've got that persistent history with the group and the ability to manage it, way more like iMessage than it is like Skype. This is a good thing in that there are a lot of new features there and better ways to communicate. There is a challenge though, where people are used to Skype, that this isn't that, right? That change and that, we expected it to work one way and it's not, causes some cognitive dissonance. And we're just going to call that out as a change that we know we're going to have to work through and learn some new skills to be comfortable with. In the end, though, this ends up being a much more effective way to do those interactions with people over chat. Okay, so we've simulated just some very basic things here. We've shown that we can send everybody basic one-line chat messages, longer things that look more like an email. We've shown that we support the ability to do @mentions before the meeting experience, as well as to go and start pulling more additional people into the conversation or leave it if we're not relevant. I want to show that we can go and start doing collaboration ahead of time, right? So I'm going to go and pick a file and upload it from my computer. And maybe we pick the Big Boss meeting file here and say, hey, here is the draft PowerPoint deck. Feel free to help spruce it up. Boop. When I hit the paperclip icon, right, to attach a file, I have the option to either grab a local file or pick one that I already have in OneDrive. Regardless of which option I pick, the end location for this is going to be OneDrive, right? So I grabbed a file from my computer, and really what happened is it uploaded it to OneDrive and shared it with Deborah and Isaiah, right? In fact, and so while I see the card here that allows me to interact with the file, right, I can click on it to go and open up the file and start working with it. If I were to go and look at the Files tab, I will see all of the files that were shared in the context of this meeting. So especially for recurring meetings or for big meetings that have a lot of important content, like maybe you're planning a 3-hour-long public Q&A session on COVID response. You might have dozens of documents that you're working on or dozens of pieces of content that you're working on as a group that will be shared with your people ahead of time. I want to call out that when we share using things like OneDrive and SharePoint, we have the ability to go and collaboratively work on these documents. And we'll go into a lot more detail on this stuff later. But I'm going to flip over and make this a little bit bigger and show that just clicking on the card is going to open the PowerPoint. And I have the ability to go and edit the PowerPoint right here directly within Teams. And this experience we see embedded for editing any of the Office documents is really just the Office Online apps experience. So if I want to, pop it out and do a separate tab, I can say open this document in a browser. And we'll see we have the same features for editing and working on the document here as I did inside of the Teams experience. Similarly, if I want to open it in the full-blown PowerPoint desktop app, I still have that option as well. What you're going to notice is that the overwhelming majority of things you ever need to do in a PowerPoint deck, in a Word document, or an Excel spreadsheet are all supported just natively in this web experience without launching the full-blown desktop app. It might not seem like it's a big deal to wait the 5, 10, 15 seconds for the full-blown desktop app to launch. But when you can open it in the browser and make quick changes or significant changes without having to wait for that 10, 15 seconds to pass, you'll notice that employees tend to stop launching the desktop apps a lot of the time. In fact, there are when we picked the features to implement first into the web versions of these apps, we did it based off of the features that get used most often. What you're going to notice is we're so far into developing these web apps that there are truly very few reasons to have to go and launch the full-blown desktop app because you could do almost everything up in the cloud. So unless you're somebody who's writing macros and things like that, you'll see that you can do everything you want in just this browser experience. So even on the Excel side, if you're working, co-authoring that Excel spreadsheet or a report in Excel, all of the formulas and all of that kind of stuff works natively in the web browser experience. It's just the very, very least used features of the desktop apps that don't exist in the web experience. So, and to just kind of go show this off, right, I've got my sample agenda. I'm in here as Joanna. And I'm looking at it, and Joanna's the one who asked for help. So this is as far as Joanna was going to be able to bring it. And we can do things like insert comments. We can continue the conversation from our chat as well. But if I go and look at the experience other people have, right? So now I'm going in here as Deborah. I'm going to open the same file. We see that since we're using OneDrive and SharePoint, we can co-author these documents together, right? We can have up to 100 people in there working on these things. There were a couple questions that came in saying, hey, do we have to have OneDrive or SharePoint to share files? And the answer is yes, absolutely yes. Teams in and of itself doesn't do that much. Remember, Teams is designed to be the hub inside of all the Office 365 apps. So OneDrive exists for personal file sharing. SharePoint exists for shared document sharing. We didn't rebuild a separate set of tools inside of Teams for sharing documents because those already existed in other parts of Office 365. It's just that now instead of having to switch over and switch context to the other tools, we've pulled those into the context of our collaboration over and over and over again. All right, so co-authoring here. Right, I see where Joanna is editing. Go for it.
Let me just interrupt you. This question continues to come up. So there's a couple of questions around, do we need to have OneDrive and SharePoint Online enabled in order to do file-based collaboration in Teams? So if you want to speak a little bit to that, how kind of yes, but I'll let you explain.
Yeah, and I think I just went over that as a resounding yes, right? Teams does not, Teams leverages the other Office 365 apps for their functionality rather than rebuilding them. So all file sharing done inside of a regular meeting is done via OneDrive. If you're in an organization that doesn't have OneDrive enabled yet, you will see that you can't share files inside of a regular Teams meeting. there is no way to have a team without SharePoint, because teams are built off of Office 365 groups. All of the file and content pieces are part of SharePoint. In fact, if you disable a SharePoint license, people won't even be able to sign into Teams. So Teams exists to be that central hub in the middle of all of the other Office 365 apps, right? It really isn't all that much by itself. Even when we go and look at the chat messages, right? The chat messages and all that communication way under the covers is just using the same Office 365 messaging substrate that Outlook is. So when you go to do something like eDiscovery to pull these messages out of Teams, they actually are just going to come out in a PST file as an email, because under the hood, it's really just leveraging all of those things that already exist in those other tools. Okay, so let's finish this thought of collaborating on content ahead of time. So we were showing that if Joanna's in here and editing, that we see that oh, and I closed it, that when Deborah comes in here, she can see what's being worked on. How we handle this is that Joanna, wherever she's editing, she has that part of the document locked. So in a PowerPoint deck, it's going to be whatever element they have clicked, like a text box, that will be locked and I won't be able to edit over her. In a spreadsheet, it's locked down to the cell. In a Word document, I believe it's at the sentence. It might be at the paragraph level. I kind of forget. Haven't tried to do some conflicting edits. But we see this happen all the time. I was working with a group of attorneys that worked for a Midwestern state, for Michigan. And we showed them document co-authoring, and one of the guys came up after a meeting. He's like, I literally drive from my house in the Upper Peninsula, get on a ferry, then drive the rest of the way to Lansing to go and sit in a conference room with a projector so we can edit contracts together. Now, not only do I not have to do all of that travel, but this is way easier than everybody talking to the one person running the laptop in the middle of the room to get the documents updated. So co-authoring can be a really, really useful thing to make it easier to collaborate with your peers while you're doing this work. And we think about prepping for a meeting, getting the PowerPoint presentation done. Imagine doing that over email today, right? If I've got a group of people planning a leadership development program, I might have 2 or 3 people from HR, I might have 3 or 4 or 5 instructors, I might have 5, 10, 15 senior leaders who are interested in this. For me to not communicate in silos, I might send an email to everybody for their feedback on the agenda and the PowerPoint deck. I might have that as an attachment in there. And then I might get 5, 10, 15 emails back. Sometimes people replying all, sometimes people replying to just me, sometimes people attaching an updated copy of the document that I then need to merge the changes in. Sometimes just giving me changes in text. Like the amount of work, the amount of dings of a new email at the top of my inbox might be 50, 60, 100. And then for me to not do that in a silo, it might be 50, 60, 100 in other people's inboxes, right? A ton of extra time spent, where if instead we did it in the context of a team, we would be able to let people have visibility into it. So if they were interested, they could participate. It's not in a silo, but we are able to go and collaborate with the group in a way that's sane, right? And this is where we get to, hey, just if a group adopts Teams, they oftentimes see their email volumes drop by a half or more, right? Hearing people say that they're 75% or receiving 75% fewer emails after their whole peer group at work has adopted Teams, totally normal, right? It's a much more efficient way to communicate here. Okay, so co-authoring this thing, let's finish this out. All right, we want to make this pretty. Deborah, that's her thing. She's the manager. She knows how to make it look good. So she's going to go in here and, I don't know, hit the ... No, we'll hit design ideas. And yep, click. That looks prettier. Oh, an agenda. We'll use design ideas here. There we go. Artificial intelligence. We'll figure out which icons to put there. Introductions. I don't know, those all look kind of boring. Let's try this one. Status reports. This one looks good. Nope, this one. There we go. Future goals. Now let's do the iconography there. Timeline. Oh, yep, designer did that for me. And then lunch break. Okay, well, there we go. We've gone from the most basic, boring PowerPoint presentation ever to one that's pretty in about 12 seconds. Done. My work here is done. This is why Deborah's the boss and gets paid the big bucks. She knows how to click the designer inside of the online tools. All right, we've collaboratively created an agenda. And even with me teaching through all of this in less than 10 minutes, we now have a big, beautiful PowerPoint presentation. One of the key things here, if you got nervous about the idea of sharing files with people and having them edit them, right? Maybe we want to keep things a little closer to our vest because we're used to our boss breaking our PowerPoint presentation or messing up your formulas in your spreadsheets. Just realize when we're using OneDrive, when we're using SharePoint to do all of these things, one of the features of those platforms is file version history. So if you ever do need to go and revert to previous versions of files, we have the ability to do that. So if you're ever in like the team context here, right, we'll oftentimes show, look, if we just hit open in SharePoint, it's going to pop that set of documents open, showing the document library in SharePoint, and we get all of the SharePoint goodness here, right? Like file version history to go and see who broke what in my pretty employee handbook or whatnot, right? That's one of the just a native feature of these platforms that make it easier for us to go and trust the people we're working with, that if they do break something, we'll be able to see that, who broke what and restore it, right? It's going to make me break down as many silos as possible.
Hey, Nash.
Yeah.
Real quick, there's several questions about if a guest attendee to a meeting will be able to co-author, if they'll be able to access files that are shared in meeting chat.
Yep, so files that are shared in meeting chat are shared by OneDrive. By default, OneDrive allows you to share files externally, meaning I can go into my OneDrive and I can go and share it with that fearson@gmail.com. However, there are lots of government organizations that for one reason or another have disabled external file sharing in OneDrive. Those organizations have decided that you are not allowed to share those files for co-authoring and for seeing inside of this experience. That's the governance decision that they've made. If your organization has blocked people from external file sharing in OneDrive, hopefully they've done a good job of documenting that governance decision, and you can go and find the reason why they did it. If not, that might be something to contact your service desk to ask, hey, can I have this enabled for me? And if not, can you help me understand why that governance decision was made? And hopefully maybe then it'll make sense why that's not appropriate for you to do. Okay, so yep, external file sharing absolutely can be done, but only if your organization allows external sharing. And I cover a lot of organizations, but I have, like, of the 10 organizations that I work with most often, my biggest one blocks external file sharing. So it is a conversation that comes up over and over again of you're not allowed to use this tool to share files externally. In that case, they have to fall back to email to send those files out. So, okay. I am blanking on how to do my file version history from directly inside of the web app. Oh, right here. Yeah. Version history. There we go. Okay. So I showed how to go to get to file version history for some SharePoint files. But for files shared in OneDrive as well, you don't even have to go that far. When you're looking in the web version, the file name is up towards the top. Actually, let's switch that to green. There we go. And it will say saved, right? Files are auto saved. You make any changes, it's going to automatically save them right away by default in OneDrive. If you hit the little caret for the drop down, at the bottom will be the ability to access that file's version history. And once I hit version history, we'll be able to see the whole version history of how the changes have played out, as well as to roll things back, right? So I can go and see, yeah, we went in the course of 4 minutes with Nash talking the whole time from this bland and boring PowerPoint to this pretty one that looks like I spent hours on it. Hint, I don't spend hours on PowerPoint presentations. I let artificial intelligence figure out how to lay this stuff out and make it pretty for me. But yeah, so that's how we go and grab the version history from within an Office document. If this were a Word document or an Excel spreadsheet, it would have been the same thing. We'd see the file name up in the top. We'd hit the little caret for dropping it down. We'd be able to see the version history. The parallel view of what I showed in the SharePoint document library would be to come to your OneDrive folder and see all of the things like my big boss meeting and hit the ellipses ... and scroll down to version history. Okay. This is also where I would be able to see who I shared this file with. And I mentioned this before, but I was going pretty fast. By default, files shared within a meeting will be shared automatically with all of the internal attendees who you've invited. If you want to invite an external attendee to have access to it, you can, but that won't happen automatically. This is kind of a negotiation between the folks who are very liberal about wanting to let their employees communicate and collaborate with people that they need to communicate and collaborate to get their job done, and some of the very conservative folks who are like, oh my God, well, what if somebody does something wrong? So yet, while you can share these external, it isn't going to happen automatically. You'd have to choose to. So I go here and share it with the external identity that I invited. It'll warn me they're outside of the organization, and I hit grant access. Now that external user would have access to this file, assuming your organization allows external file sharing. Keep those questions coming. I'm kind of watching the stream here. Seti, Stacy, thanks for keeping me on task with those. It is 11 o'clock. Is this the point I'm supposed to start or stop? It's noon. It's time. This was our lunch break, wasn't it?
Yeah. So
I'm on Central Time.
So yeah, whenever you wrap up, we will have an intermission, a break about until 1 p.m. Eastern Standard Time.
Okay, I've got 2 things that I'm going to go and finish up, and we'll try 3 minutes, and then we'll let everybody go do their lunch, and then we'll come back. Does that sound like a plan? Okay. Yeah. The built-in meeting notes functionality is great. It's going to give us essentially a wiki to go and keep track of lightly structured information, right? I can have different sections in here and lay stuff out. I love this feature. It works great for, I think now you can have 100 persons in here at a time. But this meeting notes functionality right here does not support external users ever. We do not today have a way to share the meeting notes out directly within the Teams environment, right? Now, these meeting notes in a regular Teams meeting are going to be stored in your OneDrive, and the file itself could be shared out, but it still wouldn't work in the Teams context. So we do see people like publishing their meeting notes after the fact to external attendees that way, but they still won't be able to use this in the meeting context. Meeting notes is a good way of handling an agenda. Maybe it doesn't make sense to have a Word document for the agenda because it's really light, and yet doing chat wasn't quite enough. Great, use the meeting notes for being able to communicate that to internal attendees. I will call out one, okay, so that's one of the 2 things I wanted to call out. The other is if you're using tools like Planner to keep track of your tasks, be sure to have your team update their planner items before the meeting. And this is just a best practice from my experience. I've been on a lot of teams that meet every week for an hour, and oftentimes the first 20 minutes is everybody going around the room to update status on tasks that they were talking about from last week. If instead of doing that, you were to go and use tools like Planner, to handle your objectives, your whatever. As a manager, I could just say, make sure planner is up to date, so that people could come in and be like, oh yeah, it's done. And we can spend that 20 minutes in the meeting on things other than asking people what's done or what's not done. Everybody can just look at the shared planner for our group and be done with it. So that's a key tip of making sure that our efforts ahead of the meeting can mean that our actual meeting time is spent on the most important reasons why we have to get together. And if we ran out of those reasons, then we don't even have to have the meeting in the first place because we did such a good job ahead of time. I'm not going to run us any further over time. Asete, thank you so much for setting this up today. Can you say again, we're on break until 1 o'clock Eastern? Is that what we're supposed to be on?
Yes, we will be on break until
I'm going to stick around to answer questions in Q&A, but if people want to head out to eat, that is more than okay.
Yeah, I love that idea, actually. If anyone wants to eat lunch, have coffee, and chat questions via the Q&A, you're more than welcome. The live event will still be going on. I'll go ahead and place a placeholder slide here, just so everyone knows that we will be back at 1 p.m. So yeah, Darby will take us through all of the amazing Teams meeting features at 1 p.m. So I hope to see everyone back here.
Awesome, thank you. Matthew asks if multiple users are editing a single note, or is it that multiple users are editing a single note, or does each user have their own version? So I assume you're asking about the meeting notes. The meeting notes are shared meeting notes. So when I go back to my meeting context and see the meeting notes, need more screen real estate here. Close the file, meeting notes. Best meeting ever so far. Bloop. If I were to go and look at the same meeting notes from Deborah's point of view, she sees the same stuff. Totally agree, Deborah. Right? We do have a shared set of files here, right? It's one set of meeting notes. It's not my personal meeting notes. If I want to take personal meeting notes, I would go to my personal OneDrive and take those files there. However, oftentimes lots of people take personal meeting notes but then don't share them, and that's the problem. So the built-in meeting notes functionality is designed to make it really easy to have shared meeting notes. Now, if you're a OneNote wizard and you already have shared OneNote notebooks that are used for meeting minutes, meeting agendas, this is going to feel like a super, super lightweight version of that, and you're going to miss things. That's fine. In those scenarios, keep using OneNote. OneNote is an amazing tool for sharing and structuring all sorts of information. So love the features and functionalities of OneNote. And realize that once we get meeting extensibility inside of Government Community Cloud, you'll be able to pull those OneNote notebooks into the context of the meeting even. So we'll see even better note-taking functionality. In the meantime, use your OneNote notebooks outside of the meeting context for places where that's appropriate, and use the built-in meeting notes functionality for when it makes sense to just have a really lightweight shared set of meeting notes.
Hey, Nash.
Yep.
I was also going to point out that Ricardo's going to cover all things OneNote and meetings tomorrow.
Great. Kevin's asking, so can chat files be stored in a channel for all to see and access? Anytime that you go and have channel conversations, right, and go and attach a file that you upload from your computer, by default, it's being uploaded to the document, the SharePoint document library associated with this channel, and shared with all of the members of the team. If you go and have a channel meeting, which we're going to cover in detail later on, any files shared during that meeting, any chat you make during that meeting, all of that really is just channel posts and your channels files. But channel meetings really are the corner case. We don't always do that. The overwhelming majority of meetings we have are still I went to Outlook, I created a Teams meeting where all of that chat is just group chat, not associated with a team in a channel. All the files shared are just shared with OneDrive versus SharePoint being used in the team. So good question there, Kevin. There's some questions about how many people we can get into a team meeting, which I'm sure we'll cover in the next session after lunch, but just remember there's a documented limit of 300. You can have more. It will go bigger than 300 today, where it's technically not supported, but it'll work. But until you hit that 350th person, they'll still be able to get in. And we are looking in the very near future at increasing that limit significantly. So watch the news for that over this next quarter.
I see there's a question about the gallery view. So I'm going to go ahead and parking lot that for Darby's session, and she'll cover that at the 1 p.m. Session.
Okay. Since we're kind of on break, can I ask about that too? So this person's saying that in a gallery view, some of their users can't see other people's video. They're only seeing their icon. There are a lot of things that can cause that, right? So if they've maybe got some of the network ports for video closed, that could mean that you can't see all of the videos because one of those ports might not be open. There might be issues on your client, or there might be issues on our backend service. So I do highly recommend anytime you're in a meeting and someone's sharing video and you know that other people can see it, but you can't, open a support case. You're going to want to make sure that that support person can get logs from your local computer to determine, is it something on your computer, on your local network, or on the backend service that's Microsoft's problem to fix. All three of those, your computer, the network, or Microsoft, could be the issue. The only way to solve that is to open up a support case and try to figure that out.
There's a question here relevant to your session. Can you demonstrate again how to get Teams meeting information in the body of the meeting from within Teams?
Yeah.
Is it just ending up as an appointment?
Yep. So if I want to get back to the meeting details, when I do that, there's more than one way to get there. When I want to go and pull up my meeting details, I'm going to flip over to my calendar and just click on the calendar item, and I'm going to see the body of the meeting right here. I can still flip over to chat. I can go and flip over to the file details and go look at the meeting notes from this calendar view. There's a lot that I can do here, but I can see the details. I will point out that the meeting details don't show up as a tab when I'm just going at this from the meeting chat. Personally, I think that's a little bit of an oversight. I think they should have that right here because there are plenty of times where I've ended up over in the meeting chat, and I would love to be able to quick flip back to the meeting details. Can't. I got to go to the calendar and open up the calendar item to see the meeting body again.
Okay.
Yep. You're welcome, Joe.
Next question is, where do I go and what icon do I click on to begin and create a PowerPoint again? Oh.
So to create a PowerPoint, we literally in the meeting environment here don't see the ability to just create a new one. We don't have a new file button to generate a new one, although I think that's a great idea. We should put feedback in to request that in this experience. So what I did was I shared a file with this group using a PowerPoint I already had. However, I could certainly go to OneDrive and pick those existing things. If I flipped over to portal.office.com in this environment, example where I'm just trying to stick to the browser, I can either go to PowerPoint to create a new presentation. I could go to my OneDrive to go and create a new presentation. I could pop open the PowerPoint desktop app and make a new one and save it to my OneDrive. There's lots of ways that I could go to create that file if we're truly looking to make a new PowerPoint presentation to end up using to share. If the PowerPoint file is already in my OneDrive and I didn't have it saved locally to my computer, which ideally we're never doing because we want to make sure we're leveraging those cloud resources to ensure stuff is backed up and that we can meet our e-discovery and compliance requirements. But if it's already in my OneDrive, I can go and hit the share button and pick it when I hit the OneDrive list. So there were 3 different ways to do there. It really is whatever is most convenient for you. And maybe I'll take a takeaway of, hey, it'd be really nice if there was the option to go and create new content right here. As a, save us an extra step of starting from PowerPoint or OneDrive.
All right. Nash, let's go ahead and take a break. I'm going to wrap it up. And I think we got to most of the questions. If we have not answered your specific question, like I said earlier, we will make sure to review the Q&A report after the event and circle back with the audience. Also, just wanted to reiterate one more time. I know Nash mentioned this, but just wanted to reiterate one more time that what we're showing you today is kind of the capability across, all users. So your specific organization may have a different policy. So if you don't see something that Nash or anyone else today is showing in your tenant, that may be because how your configuration is set. So what we're showing you today is really the capability of the platform. So just wanted to highlight that since I saw a couple of notes in regards to that.
Yeah, the organizations I work with, I coach them through the process of how do you document and communicate the organization-specific governance decisions. So hopefully your organization already has that. If not, that's the sort of thing you're going to probably have to just contact your help desk. But prompt them, ask them if they can document all of the organization-specific things, because whatever training you look at, whatever Microsoft blog posts or other things you see, if your organization has made organization-specific decisions, it's going to impact your experience there. And ideally, they've got one place where they're documenting the things that they have chosen to change, and just as importantly, if not more importantly, why they chose to do it. So that it doesn't just feel like they're punishing you, right? There's usually a good business reason why they made those decisions. Hopefully, they've got one single spot to communicate that to you. So if your organization doesn't have one of those today, and you have a modern workplace CSM, we were all able to help kind of coach through that process of documenting and communicating that stuff out to business areas. So, and we can steal from stuff that other organizations like yours have already done to make it super easy.
Thank you so much, Nash. This was an amazing presentation, not only for everyone who attended, but also because this is going to be our resource collateral to share with others who may not have attended the session today. So thank you so much. It was super helpful.
It was an absolute pleasure. And to all of the people attending today, thank you so much for taking time out of your busy day to learn something new. And thank you for all that you're doing to support your state or local government organization, especially in times of COVID. We know that you've had to deal with a lot of change and adaptation in order to continue the operation and mission of your organization. That struggle and effort is seen by Microsoft. We appreciate it. The citizens of your community appreciate it. If there's anything that Microsoft can help your business area do to address your pressing needs, do please feel free to reach out to your account team, especially the Modern Workplace CSMs. We are here to partner with your business area to help you solve your most challenging business problems. Thank you again for your time and for all that you do for your community.
Thank you, Nash. And we'll go mute for now. You will see this placeholder slide until we return at 1 p.m. Eastern time. Thank you.